To fix our player controller and make it a lot more versatile, we're going to start by refactoring our update grounding method. Instead of copying and pasting a check center, check left, and check right, we're going to call in a single check ground method and then just pass in the different positions that we want to check against. That way we can check the center, the far right, the far left, or any number of other points along the way, or just use totally arbitrary points. To do that, we're going to start by taking the lines from 148 to the end of 154 and just extracting this into a method. The reason that we're selecting this is because if you look at all of our lines below, the only thing that changes is the origin. So we're going to select everything after the origin, so the origin will be passed in as a parameter to the method that we're extracting. If I select the origin here, in fact, let's do it real quick. Select the origin, hit enter, alt enter, and extract. You see that I get a method with no parameters named new method, and I could call this check grounding, but I wouldn't have a way to duplicate or reuse this with a different origin. I'd have to go in and change it. So I'm going to Control Z. We'll select again all the way up to the beginning of the hit, but not including the origin. Alt enter, and then extract the method. And we'll call this check grounding. And now we're passing in an origin. Inside of that check grounding method, you see that we do our raycast just like before, and we check to see if we hit a collider and do absolutely nothing different. So nothing has changed in our check grounding. We're just now extracted that into a separate method. I can also delete line 148 here because I'm not going to need it. If I delete it though, I'm going to get some errors. Let's watch it. So I delete it, and you'll see that here on check left and check right, I was trying to use that hit variable, or my code was, and it's not there, so it's giving an error. I don't want to do that, though. I just want to call check grounding in each of these positions. So I'm going to copy check grounding, select lines, everything after the origin, essentially, down to the beginning of the check right, and paste over it. Do the same here on the check right side, replace hit all the way down to the end of the brace with a check again, and now we're checking against the center, the left, and the right. If I save now and do a build, I should have 0 functional changes. Let's just go make sure that it works and that nothing has actually changed functionally yet. All right, we're back in, and I can jump and double jump. That seems good. Jumping resets when I land on the ground, and it should still bug out over here, and I should still stay in like an infinite jumping state. Okay, so no functional changes yet. Just wanted to verify that. Now that we've moved our check grounding code into a single method instead of copy and pasted, or our raycast part here, we can modify this code to check and see if we're in a trigger so that we can ignore that trigger. So let's do that now. We'll go right above line 164 and let's add a check. We'll check to see if we are in a trigger, and if so, we're just going to return back out and not set that we're grounded. So we'll say if hit.collider and hit.collider.is trigger. So if I hit a collider and I'm in a trigger, in that case, let's just return. We won't say that we're inside of or we're grounded at all, and check grounding will not return if we hit a trigger as our thing that we're hitting with our raycast. Now, if I go back into Unity, you'll see that this somewhat fixes the issue. Oh, look, my character just got a little bit bugged out. I can double jump now, and I'm not getting the extra unlimited jumps here, but my character will still occasionally bug out. Look at that. It still thinks that I'm in jumping mode right now. And the reason for this, if I clear out my log, let's go back to the console and clear out the log and do a jump and see if we can see it, is that we land, we're touching the grass, and we're touching the grass, and we're touching the grass, but then we stop touching the grass and we're no longer grounded. So it thinks that my character is not grounded. If I go to the player and go select them, and then let's go check the is grounded, and see that he doesn't look like he's grounded. He actually doesn't think he's grounded. And the reason for that is that our raycast, notice that it's not hitting this, showing this touching grass mid, it's actually hitting the background here and never getting to the part. So not the background, the trigger area. It's hitting the trigger area here on line 166 and never getting down to the next line. Let's go into debug mode now, like I mentioned before, and see that in action. So if I put my breakpoint there, just click to the left and add a breakpoint, and then press F5 or attach to Unity. F5 is the default and the hotkey that I'm using. It should now run our check grounding method multiple times per frame. See, we should get a pause and a break any second now. There we go. And we'll see that we're hitting a collider. That's the B trigger. And then if I hit F10, it just wants to return. And it's never going to get down here to line 169 to say that we're grounded. So we need to change this. The reason that this is happening, and it may not happen for you, it's going to be very dependent on your system and the scene setup exactly. The reason that it happens is the physics 2D raycast method only returns back the first thing that it hits, or the first thing that it finds in the list. And I believe it's doing them by the internal object ID, but I'm not completely sure. What we can do, however, is find all of the objects and then just loop through them. So we're going to change this check grounding method. Instead of doing a raycast, we're going to do a raycast all. I'm going to stop debugging. We're going to change this from raycast to raycast all. And then we're going to change from raycast hit 2D to a raycast hit 2D array by adding the two braces, and rename this from hit to hits. Then we'll add a for loop. So say for each var hit in hits. And we'll add a opening brace. I'll delete out that closing brace, go way down to the end of our if statement here, add a new line and another closing brace. So now we've taken what we were doing against one raycast hit, these lines right here that I've selected, 168 through 176, and now we're running them against everything that we hit in our check, in our raycast, instead of just the first object. Now, this is going to cause a little bit of a problem, though, because on line 169, we don't continue on and check all of the things. We return back out if we hit a trigger. That's not what we want to do. We want to just continue on and check the next object so that our loop actually works and we've solved the problem. Let's save now and go check it out. See if we can now see our character working properly in that area, or in our trigger area. All right, here we are in the trigger area. If I jump again. Oh, got my double jump, one jump, two jumps, and I'm good. And it looks like my jumping is working. I'm no longer bugging out. I can land on the ground, and things are getting a little bit better. Let's go into the water, though. So I go into the water, and I jump, land, jump, land, jump. Oh, I can't jump anymore. So we need to make one more change to our check to make sure that if we're in the water, that also counts as being on the ground. So to do that, we'll stop playing, go back into our player script, and now we have that one single place to check. We can check it right here on line 168. So if we hit a trigger and that trigger is not water, then we'll continue on. If we hit a trigger and the trigger is water, then we're going to just mark it as grounded. We'll say that, yes, we are grounded because the object, well, it's water, so it counts as the ground. So we'll say if the collider.isTrigger is true and hit.collider.getComponent water is equal to null. So we did not get a water. Now I'm going to add these out as separate lines because I think it makes it a lot easier to read. And then let's evaluate it one more time. Make sure that it's all easy to understand. We can probably refactor and change things around even a little bit more. In fact, I can see that we've got this hit collider check twice. Let's move that up to the top and do an early exit so we can simplify this down a little bit. So I'm going to take line 173, cut it, move it up here to 168, and we'll say if hit.collider, and let's add a not. So if there's no collider, then we'll continue. That way I can get rid of the hit.collider check in the other spots. So now on 171, I can get rid of that and simplify this statement down a little bit. And then I can get rid of the braces on 176 and now 179. Control K, Control D to fix my formatting. And I think it's getting a little bit easier to read. Let's do a Shift Delete on 175. And now let's evaluate it one more time. So we're looping through all of our hits. If we didn't have a collider, somehow we've got something in here that doesn't have a collider. Shouldn't happen, but if that does happen, we'll continue on and just keep going. If we hit a trigger and the trigger does not have a water on it, then we'll continue on, because water triggers we want to count as ground, but everything else we don't. Otherwise, we've hit something that's not a trigger and is water, so we mark as grounded to true, and then we check to see if we should be marked on the snow. Now there is an issue here. Is on snow could be set to true in one frame and false on another frame or another part of the frame. So we could call in check grounding. The left foot could be on snow, and then we get is on snow to set to true, and then we check the right foot right after that, and if the right foot was not on snow, then we could be setting it to false. So if we want to make sure that if any piece is on snow that it gets set to true, we can also make one quick modification to line 176, and instead of doing an equals, we can do an or equals. So we do it's shift in the key right above enter, or shift in the pipe that's right next to backsplash or backspace, not backsplash, backspace, and that will make it be set to true if it was false, but not set to false if it was true. So it'll turn it on, but not turn it back off. Now, is on snow is already getting set to false at the beginning of the frame, so it'll only get set to true. It'll never get improperly set back to false. All right, I think that's all we need. We're going to save our code, do one more build, and then go test it out. And here we are. I should be able to jump normally on the regular ground. Looks good. In the water, I can jump unlimited, I assume. I'm always marked as grounded. Look at that. Yep. Jumping is good there. And then if I go into my trigger area, jump, looks good. I can run around. I still get stuck on things. We haven't touched that yet. But I can still run and jump and properly get into the correct jumping and landed and grounded states. Things are looking good, so I'm going to stop playing, go into plastic. And before we commit, let's do a quick diff and just take a look at our changes. So we'll open up the player diff, and we can see that we've just added in, well, here's a little bit of extra spacing there, but down below, the part that matters, we've added in a check grounding method, and we've refactored our update grounding to call that. You can see that there's still a little bit of room to clean this up, I think, but it's getting quite a bit better. And now we've got one spot that now works properly in triggers and in water. So let's close that out and say that we've fixed jumping in triggers and water and refactored the grounding method. And we'll check that in.